as you can probably tell, quite not versed in public speaking and very nervous. So bear with me. Yeah. So I was thinking, as similar to what Charmaine said, I will speak a little bit, kind of about the work, or what I think is maybe relevant, and then I might do a reading of one of the texts, I'm not sure. We'll see how the first bit goes. And then, yeah, if there are any questions or you just have anything to say, yeah, that's the space. So that's kind of how it's going to go. Yes. So yeah, as I said, not great at speaking publicly or speaking generally, which is sort of relevant to the work in a way, because I think a lot of it is kind of about attempts at communication, sometimes verbally, sometimes written text, but generally less obvious ways of communicating, or touch. But I might come back to that later, I'm not sure. But I thought it might be slightly easier to tell a kind of story. A story, it's kind of like how this show has come into existing. Yeah, so hopefully that's okay. So the story is set in winter. And so last December, I was really cold, but not just physically, but sort of in my body and my mind, and I felt really this coldness in also my work and my personal life, and they were kind of running alongside each other, these parallels of kind of pain and like a strangling feeling and not really going anywhere. And it had kind of come after a period of some quite difficult things had happened. Anyway, I said to two of my very close friends, let's go somewhere hot. And I was actually watching a cookery program, and it was set in Seville, and they were describing it as the frying pan of Europe, and I thought, you know what, I could be in a frying pan right now. That sounds great. So, miracle of miracles, given me and my friend's nature, we actually managed to get to Seville. And I had also, in this kind of period, been having these repeated images in my mind that I thought were connected to my work and also my life. But I kept thinking about the sea and the sun and like heat in my body and sunlight, and I was picturing this very still, beautiful ocean in the sunlight. And so as well as going to Seville, we decided to go to the coast, and we decided to go to Cadiz on the coast. And we got there, and it was very emotional, and it was hot, and it was just what I wanted. And yeah, it was good. But then the next day it started to rain. And then the next day it rained, and then the next day it rained, and it just rained the whole time. And just prior to getting there, something quite difficult had happened. So it was raining, and I was crying, and I was crying, and it was raining, and it was just not at all what I had thought it was going to be. And when I was there, I was doing bits of reading, and I read this quote by Anais Nin. And the quote was, when one is pretending, the entire body revolts. And it felt very apposite in this very turbulent kind of difficult bodily place that I was searching for. What I think I was searching for was like healing in my work, in my life. And I thought that would be really beautiful. I thought healing, that's going to be sunlit and gorgeous, and it was actually pretty disgusting and turbulent and black and gross, and I pictured this beautiful sea, this ocean, and in reality, partly because we had decided to go in February, the sea was very black and angry and rolling and turbulent, and it kind of felt, at the same time as being intensely painful, quite appropriate. And I felt kind of stupid because I had thought this healing thing, or what I now realize was probably more like a pursuit of authenticity, I thought it would be very beautiful, and I realized that healing isn't really pleasant. And so in the work, this was a period of time where the work was sort of conceived and gestated and was born, but that's a thread that, as well as the sea itself and the body and light and all of these things, I think within it, I hope that maybe it comes across somewhat that there's this kind of attempt at authenticity, or a fight against erasure of one's true self, which I hope that throughout the work that is a thread that is maybe visible, and as Charmaine said, it is personal, but I hope that, and I think that this fight, and I think it is a fight against contorting oneself, against having to be what people want you to be, or whatever it is. I think it's very present in a lot of people's lives and in the world right now. And I think that is what I wanted to say. Apart from which, I touched upon speaking about language at the start, and I think probably in my work, probably for my whole life, that will be quite a big theme, is speaking or expressing, or language, non-verbal language. And I think somehow, in a way that I'm not sure I can articulate, it is relevant and connected to a sort of asserting one's existence in a world that doesn't really want you to exist as you are. Something about limitations of language, or certainly of verbal language. But maybe if anyone has any further questions, we could talk more about that after. I think that's what I wanted to say about that. And as I mentioned, you might have seen there's quite a lot of text in the show. And I was thinking of reading one of the texts, which I've never ever read anything. I've actually never shown text until this year. But sometimes, and I write in lots of different ways, but sometimes how I write is that I speak, so I have lots and lots of voice recordings. So many, which is why my phone is not working, probably. But so I thought it could be interesting to go from speaking to writing to speaking again. If anybody is willing to be part of this experiment. Yes, so I'm going to try and read something. Just give me a minute. There is also, by the way, at the end or in between, if you need water, and there's some refreshments. So. I had a day that felt quite driven by this sort of fastness, and I did all these good things but felt like it was driven by a kind of empty, fast thing in my stomach. Can you be driven by emptiness? Like the edges of the stomach, of the gut. The gut are tingling, and it's kind of like tingling with light and speed in your gut. And your heart's racing and you're just driven around by your gut and your anxiety. I think it's anxiety. But I hate that word. It doesn't have any meaning anymore. It doesn't have any meaning. I should look it up. But I thought about this. These words that I read, these two wild seas, and I thought about wildness and the water and sea. Imagine two wild seas, like two people, two lovers, two lovers. And they're driven and they're churned up and they have this speed driving them around and emptiness, and like when there's wildness in the sea, there's so much air, so fast is this speed. And there's a depth to wildness. But with anxiety, it's like there's a shallowness. There's an emptiness and a shallowness, and it's not considered wildness. It's not deliberate. It's not authentic and truthful and gorgeous and who you are. It's this shallow fear. And imagine two lovers who are driven by fear, trying to calm the water, or trying to be deeper and more dangerous or wilder, more truly wild, with a depth that is dark blue and tingles with the sunlight on it, in the core, in the gut. It's full and it's deep, and it's like a powerful wildness. But London makes it hard to resist the shallow claws of anxiety in London and get truly into the guts and be a pair of lovers. Two wild seas merging and joining and full. And I feel there's this urgency in this fast, shallow, fearful, weird allure. And allure is not the right word, because that's a word that I love. It's more like a vacuous preying on the worst things that you think about yourself. And that's what London feels like to me quite a lot of the time. And I try to find the paths and the slowness and the depth. But there's people around constantly pushing you onto dirty, disgusting, shallow, surface money, And it's all just bullshit. Unless you have the deep, hot, full stomach. You and your lover together. Wild and strong and powerful. That's all that matters. And that's the sea. And I'm looking for that. Maybe. But today felt driven by the fast, empty stomach. The gut full of air and worry and disconnection. There's moments where I feel closer to intertwining, dark, deep connection. But this city, takes a lot of strength to fight and to keep those and cultivate those and give love to those flickering flames, those little fledgling waters that can be they will be. They give glimpses to the deep real, wild and indescribable, passionate sea. And I want to care for those little moments and help them to become strong and deep and wild. And experimenting with me. We can either maybe take a break or just continue with questions, whichever is sort of preference. But yeah.
Do you need a break?
I'll just have a little water. But if anybody does want water, there's some. And if there are any questions, yeah.
Just the same, thank you. That's so courageous. Really moving.
I think with wildness, fear is such an integral part of wildness. And I spend a great deal of time actually just up the road in the park. And I go in at dawn and I watch animals and insects be afraid all the time. They're fearful of us as humans, they're fearful of other species. There is a constant alertness that as humans we're very good at masking. It is always there. And so it's not surprising that we associate that with anxiety. Perhaps animals have a better way, the way that an animal will shake itself down afterwards, the way it will suddenly flit and then hide, the way a butterfly will just suddenly close its wings and become invisible. There's a tremendous honesty to that, and perhaps with humans we've sort of lost that honesty of showing vulnerability, of actually showing fear.
Yeah.
So bravo braveness.
Thank you. Thanks. Whenever people say well done for being brave, I kind of feel like it's almost and I'm not saying that you are saying this, but it's my thing. It's like you probably shouldn't have done that. Like that was too much. But
I'm gonna do it anyway.
No, it's my issue. But it's really interesting that you're talking about animals because oftentimes I feel, and I know I have friends who feel similarly, like quite a connection with like the honesty of animals and behaviour, and also similarly with small children who have not been conditioned to prevent themselves from feeling or showing or whatever. Yeah, and it's just, I never thought of that connection with the wildness of it. I mean, yeah, but thank you. Very perspicacious. Yeah.
And masking is exhausting.
It really is. It really is. But it's, yeah, the fear that you describe of, but it's almost not a choice, really. And it's interesting because it kind of reminds me of the quote that I mentioned, that pretense, your body will not allow it at some point, in whatever way that decides to show itself. But I mean, interestingly, I read quite a lot of kind of scientific and neurological papers and stuff about masking or not being authentic, and then the consequent physical ailments that people suffered. And like there are various experiments that have been done, and one that I remember, which I always thought was interesting, is that I'm not exactly sure ethically or like practically how this was conducted, but there was a group of women who were in unhappy marriages, and then there were a group of women who had got divorces or had left unhappy marriages, and they were both miserable. You know, if you're in an unhappy relationship, you're miserable. If you've just been divorced, whatever. And so the issue was not that they were unhappy. The issue was the authenticity. That if they had said I'm not happy in this relationship, I'm leaving, they actually had like a vast, reduced amount of physical ailments. And I can't remember, and I appreciate that's quite annoying that I can't specify, but it was like notable, especially in terms of like immune responses to inauthenticity. Yes, I don't know if that's relevant, but yeah.
Just to follow on from that, is authenticity like being true to yourself, or is it a different level?
I think that's a reasonable description. I mean, I like the word itself because I'm quite into etymologies, and the auto part of it is oneself.
Okay.
But I think, I think we're all conditioned into society, is like, especially in terms of having to earn money, having to be a particular way in order to fit into this world, and it's inevitable that you kind of bend a little bit, but there's bending that is breaking, and there's bending that you're still on the path of who you are, I guess.
And also art's meant to connect, I think, and art is about communication. I don't believe in artists who say that they just paint for themselves. They have to paint for yourself, but people have to feel something. If you see a painting, you have to make some sort of impact.
Yeah.
Could be positive, could be negative, and
Yeah.
whatever people think of your painting, it does something to you, I think. So,
Thanks. I hope so. But thank you.
it's very good, very good.
Thank you so much.
And you spoke very well. So,
Thanks. I mean, I'll probably disagree, but thank you.
everyone will agree that you spoke very well.
Thanks.
Yeah, I felt it. Over to someone else.
I have a question.
Yes.
I don't want it to be a comment, and I haven't quite composed my thoughts, so first I just wanted to say that was incredibly powerful, and thank you for sharing with us. It was wonderful to hear you read. But one of the things I really noticed when you were reading is how much space there is in your poetry, and I mean that's in the way it's presented very clear as well. So it was actually really nice to hear the pauses where you sort of place them.
Thank you.
And there seems to be like a sort of through line with your visual work, because in at least the drawings that are in this room here, there's a lot of space breaking through, isn't there? You have these kind of beams and rays, they're called crepuscular rays, which is so unfortunate because it's such an ugly word for something that's quite beautiful. But I just wanted, I guess my question was, how do you consider space in your visual work and your poetry, and what is your view of space? Is it the sort of, is that the deep that you're talking about in these poems, or is it is there a kind of like, it's a sort of your limit, your struggle to sort of express yourself coming through in these sorts of like breaks and pauses and bursts of language? Sorry, that's a bit of a...
No, not at all. I'm just digesting. I think there's a different, well, I don't know, but I would probably give a different answer for the drawings and the text. So in the text, that particular text was written by speaking. And so I try as much as possible to be accurate and true to how I spoke it. And sometimes there's small amounts of editing. But when I write it, I kind of leave space. I think it's like a thinking space. It's like it just thinking of the right way to articulate something, and then even if the next sentence is wrong. And I don't know if that's correct or not, to leave things so bare and unedited, but there's something I kind of feel compelled to do that. But with the drawings, I would say I've had to really, really learn to leave any space because I have gone through paper with so much ink before and made it whole. It's like, it's really hard to step back and say, okay, I'm going to leave that. and similarly, I was speaking to someone recently about I've started to do some watercolors, which are upstairs as well, and it's so hard to cede control to a medium that does not want to be controlled, which is like, you know, I was talking about feeling these pains and turbulence in life and art, and I thought they were parallels, and now I'm kind of thinking, actually, they're just the same thing. So when I'm talking about ceding control, whatever appears in the work is like reflective of what's happening in life. I think creating work and living, it's just the same thing. But I worked really hard to try to leave some space in this one, but I actually showed it with a lot more space, and I thought, no, there needs to be darker things. So, but yeah, I don't know if it's easier to create like a tentativeness in text or not. I'm not sure. But sorry, that doesn't really answer the question. Kezia.
Yeah, I just think I've articulated this. Thank you. Of course. It was interesting what you said about drawing a connection with the space between the text and the drawing. What has struck me, and I mean I've seen your work shown before, but I haven't thought about it until this time, was that previously, like I think I encountered your work as much more of this kind, and maybe you see this as like your now older, doing lots of line, very detailed, rich, imaginative landscapes, seemingly quite like inner imaginative realms. And I'm seeing a real contrast between that and then some of the other work that you're showing, which is much more like, and I think has picked up a bit in some of the text, maybe of like trying to see things outside, and there's something about, I'm just feeling this contrast between there's like the rich, interior, imaginative, all this stuff, and then there's the sort of simplicity of a sunset, or the simplicity of a sparrow on the street or by the pool. And that's kind of, I'm kind of asking for you to speak more about that relationship, or how you see that, the difference of the relationship with the evolution, whatever it is.
Yeah, it's interesting. You said that, does this feel like more older work? And I think, well, for a long time, for like probably 10 years, I thought, number one, that you have to work really hard and torture yourself in order for something to be worth making or existing, or to hold something. But also, and I don't know if it's just in the art world or in general, that if you start doing something, people want you to just keep doing the same thing. And it reminds me of that second album thing, where if you do something different, I hate that, do the thing you did before again. So I kind of was just very afraid to go back to Fear, to try anything else, because people were like, oh, we like the drawings, and I think, okay, and in the same way, that's kind of a masking or pleasing, contorting oneself. But I don't think I would say it was like a past thing and then this is now. I think it's more like you are allowed to have different aspects of who you are, and sometimes the best way you want to articulate or feel compelled to articulate is through brief text, and sometimes it's through an image that you've taken, and sometimes I really, really feel the urge to go back and do more drawing. So that's why I feel like it's not as linear as that. But it took me a long time, and I'm still not very confident in it, to say I can do lots of things. Because, and sort of it sort of speaks again to the language thing, is that different languages, photography, text, whatever, seem more accurate or correct or compelling to convey a particular thing than another thing, maybe. But people come in here and are like so surprised and like, so a different artist did this to this. It's like people can't, I don't know. Is that enough?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
Can I ask a question? I know
Of course.
I get to ask questions all the time, but
No, please.
First of all, I just want to say it's really interesting that you wrote your text while speaking, because actually when I read some of them, I can hear you breathing when I read them, and those pauses are almost like your breath in them. So I think that probably comes from the fact that it was spoken first. But I just wanted to ask you, when you talk about your work, there's often quite a lot of doubt associated with things, and I wanted you to tell me if there's a piece in the gallery that you look at and you think, yeah, that does what I wanted it to do. That there is no doubt. You don't have to tell us what it is that you wanted it to do, because that's up to you. But I just wondered if there was a piece that you thought, yeah, okay, happy with that.
I think some of the works in here I don't hate. And I hated them, and I've sat with them, and now I don't hate them.
Is that sort of bringing them in here?
Sometimes, and sometimes just through their existing and me not destroying them and letting them be alive. And but I think the thing of, did it do what I wanted it to do? I guess most of the time I don't really know what I want things to do. But sometimes I look at it or I read it or whatever, and I think I feel connected still, even though it's older, or I don't know if that's the same as liking something, but I mean, I've said the analogy to friends before of thinking of them as like children, and you make a child, but it's really not within your control once you've made it for whatever it does, for whoever it is. You might hate what it wears, you might think, oh, you need to stop listening to that dreadful music or whatever, but you still love it kind of, because it's a bit of you, but it's not yours anymore. Yeah, it's easier for me to like the photographs because all I did was take something. But I don't hate anything in here, I think. Oops.
Which wasn't quite the question. I would never have asked you that question.
Yeah, I mean, I think the doubt voice is strong. Yeah.
I just wanted to say that's an impossible question to answer. Really, that's impossible. So you did very well at that. Answering an impossible question.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah, of course.
As you were reading the text, you were talking about London as this kind of antithesis to the wild and the sea, and somewhere you wanted to escape. But then while I was listening, I was looking at this work, and there's so many different architectural forms and urban forms, and I was wondering how you engage with urban space and whether it really is as kind of antithetical to the wild as you might think.
Yeah, I feel like I need to live in a city, so this probably is antithetical to what I was describing, but I think maybe it's not so much that one is wild or one is not wild. It's more like a tension. It's like a dynamic that is impossible to exist in, but I love cities.
And is that what's coming out like here? Because there's so many different forms. Some feel kind of like mythical, some feel very modern.
Yeah, I mean, I love architecture as well, so it was a bit of self-indulgence maybe, but I kind of wanted to, all of the buildings really are imagined, and so people have come and said, oh, is this from this place or is this
Yeah.
from here? And I wanted to, sometimes in brevity you can say something that is very universal, and then sometimes with vast amounts of conflicting information you can say something that's universal. And so I think I was trying to not have any foot in one place, but have a volume of a range of different visual imagery that would not put you in any one place. But it does speak. I think it's urban and sort of wild at the same time. Maybe it's that tension. But yeah, I realised that I'm a bit of a fraud because I love to be in a city. So, yeah.
We had a conversation about this before, years ago, and we talked about the white spaces in this. And I'm really struck, because I remember it was a real issue for you about creating these open spaces. And then you've moved to the ocean, which is that a vast space that you actually can't control at all. So much about this is control, it's about detail, and that losing yourself as an artist in creating that detail that almost doesn't let vastness into it. And then you're going like a sort of complete volte-face to something as vast as the sea, as the ocean, where you have no control. The only thing that's bigger is space.
Yeah.
And I was really struck by this quite marked juxtaposition.
Yeah, I think I can see that. It's constant tension in existing, but we all try to put our own level of certainty and control on basically a world that's totally uncertain, and I think the sea has that very amazing, terrifying quality of showing you beauty and calmness and ripping you apart, and it's so brilliant as an analogy for almost anything, but especially for living, and I really love it, and it's really hard to give up control. It's really hard, and I'm trying, and then I'm pulled back, and I'm trying again, and it's also, I think there's a place for something very tight and something deliberate and controlled, and then there's a place for other things as well. I don't think one has to.
It's really striking when you look at this, and the way that you, because I do a lot of editing, I work a lot with words and how we place them on the page, and there is so much space. It's so spacious, and so you're very confident in actually having the white space actually dominate with the text, when you're just a small part of that. It's sort of reversed out of this, which is very intense, very intense mark-making.
Yeah, I think it's always difficult as an artist, but also as a human. But particularly, I think that people have this conception of art or artists as just emotionally driven, no kind of cognitive decision making, and there are aesthetic decisions in that, and there are aesthetic decisions in that, but there's also a driver that is maybe different, or a motivator that's different.
In the book,
yeah, I'm full of tension and conflict and all of that, yeah. But it's okay. But I think one of my favourite artists, quite boringly, but because it's true, is Van Gogh, and he is amazing. There's a reason he's as famous as he is. But I actually went to the National Gallery. There was a really big show, and I went 3 times, and I cried every time. But I was hearing people in the gallery talking about, oh yeah, he had bipolar, oh he was schizophrenic, oh this is where he cut his ear off. And it was so, when I looked at the paintings, it was like so obvious how intelligent and how much deliberateness and decision making and aesthetic judgment and obviously there's a driver emotion and there's compulsion, but this I guess there's that, and then there's using that to make something. And I think you said something earlier about you do it for yourself, but you also do it for other people, for it to be seen, kind of. I don't know if this is at all anything related to what you were saying, but in spite of it seeming oppositional, there is an element of, actually quite a lot of element, even in the spacious ones, of quite neurotic decision making, I guess. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah.
I think if there's no more questions, we'll leave it there, but do stay around. Ali will answer your questions on a one-to-one if you think of other things, which I'm sure you will as you're looking at the work. And just thank you for coming, and also thank you so much, Alexandra.